One of the most important priorities in youth ministry has always been connecting with kids. A positive adult role model, investing in the life of a kid. Name it, a coach, a teacher, a youth worker, or a parent. It's hard to refute the potential impact a caring adult can have in the life of a kid. So what does this look like? We're going to show you in 8 minutes or less. Ready? Go. It starts with a big picture understanding of ministry. We find it helpful to divide what we do in ministry into 2 categories, outreach and discipleship. Outreach is connecting with people who don't know Jesus and pointing them to him through words and actions. Discipleship is helping believers grow closer to Jesus and live more like him. Most of the students we encounter fall into one of these 2 categories. Outreach students, the ones who don't know Jesus, and discipleship students, the ones who at some time or another made a decision to follow Jesus. Positive adult role models can make a world of difference when they invest in the lives of students in either category. Our one-on-one time is going to differ with students from each of these 2 categories. Our focus with outreach students will be more evangelistic. They need Christ. Our discipleship students, however, need to understand how to live out their faith day to day. Some of you are already wondering if I'm oversimplifying. Think about it. Are all outreach students the same? Let's not be narrow and assume that all outreach students are devil-worshipping pagans. My guess is that you've probably met a variety of people who don't know Jesus. Some of them are probably pretty nice. In the same way, all discipleship students are not alike. Some show greater spiritual maturity than others, and some are real turds. In our ministry experience, we've encountered 6 types of students total. 3 kinds of outreach students and 3 kinds of discipleship students. Hopefully, your ministry puts you in a position where you encounter all 6 types of these students. Let's look briefly at each type. The first student is the one we call the no way kid.
No way!
Simply because this student is quick to tell you there is no way you'll ever see her at church. No, not all of these kids carry a perpetual snarl on their face. In fact, some of them are very nice, but they just don't want anything to do with God, his people, or faith. Be careful you don't judge them too quickly. You may assume that every no way kid is anti-God, and that's just not the case. Of course, sometimes no way kids are atheists. Surprisingly, there are a lot fewer atheists than you might think. According to a recent U.S. religious landscape survey from Pew Forum on Religion and Public Life, only 3% are atheist and 4% are agnostic. So there's a small number of young people who truly believe there is no God.
Wow.
But if they're like most of America, they don't feel they need him or church. No way kids are not impossible to reach. We've seen numerous no way kids give their lives to Christ. How? Usually because someone invested in them one-on-one. The second type of student we want to introduce you to is the not interested kid. The not interested kid is probably the most common student not at church on Sunday. In fact, there are millions of these kinds of kids. It's not because he has anything against God or the Bible, he'd just rather be anywhere else. If you ask this kid, he or she would tell you, I'm cool with God, I just don't need church. Not interested kids aren't unreachable. Usually a relationship can help change their preconceived ideas about Jesus, the church, and Christians. One thing we realized after spending considerable time with not interested kids, they don't usually want to come to our stuff, hence the not interested title. Unfortunately, that's the #1 evangelism tool many of us rely on, inviting kids to our stuff. Perhaps some of us need to break free from this crutch and learn how to connect with no-way kids and not interested kids on their turf. Earlier I mentioned there were 3 types of outreach students who don't know Christ yet. You've met 2 types so far. We call the third type of student the checking things out kid.
Huh?
This student is willing to give church a try and shows an interest in spiritual conversations. She isn't resistant to checking things out. Do you have any contact with outreach students? I think we all should. Look at Jesus' ministry. He spent a huge amount of time with crowds of unbelievers, even dining with notorious sinners. Those are the 3 outreach students. No way kids, not interested kids, and checking things out kids. But what about the students who have already accepted Christ? We call these discipleship students, and we see 3 types of them as well. The first of these kids is the one we call the stagnant kid.
Whatever.
The stagnant kid is one who made a decision to follow Christ at some point, but never really grew in faith. He's the seed that was trampled or grew for a short time, but was choked by weeds or withered away. The stagnant kid usually struggles with getting plugged into church. He might slip in and out of youth group without being noticed. He's failed to commit to a Bible study or small group, so he isn't connected with other students and isn't growing in his faith. However, stagnant kids will usually come out for fun events. If it's fun, they come. If it's deep or requires commitment, they'll usually vanish. One-on-one attention does wonders for the stagnant kid. What many of these students need is someone who will pay attention to them, hang out with them, and eventually disciple them, helping them understand a deeper faith. Jesus asked us to go out and make disciples. Discipleship is a lot of work, and some of the most effective discipleship happens one-on-one. The second discipleship student is one we call the growing kid. Growing kids are exactly who we want our stagnant kids to become, connected to God's people, the church, and growing in their relationships with Jesus. Growing kids aren't perfect.
Oh my gosh,
They still
Allie,
might
did you
talk
get any
during your
jingles for this
message,
CD?
cuss when they stub their toes, and even have a couple of explicit songs on their iPods. But they've put their trust in Jesus, and they're slowly allowing him to transform their minds. Like all believers, they're a work in progress. Growing kids usually go to a Bible study and or attend a small group. Their faith is important to them, and they're open, sometimes even eager to learn what they can do to grow each day. There's one more student we want you to meet, a student we call the Looking for Ministry kid.
I love Jesus!
The Looking for Ministry kids are probably on your student leadership team. That doesn't mean they're always up front or the life of the party. These students might have the gifts of hospitality or compassion. They might serve behind the scenes. Regardless, they're mature in their faith and are looking for opportunities to minister in everyday situations. You'll be amazed at the impact your Looking for Ministry kids can make if you equip them to love outreach students, connect with them, and engage in spiritual conversations. Some of your Looking for Ministry kids are already friends with outreach students. They play soccer, attend classes, and live on the same streets as outreach students. They don't have the barriers we have. For them, steps toward connection have already been made. Looking for Ministry kids are the ones who will become your next youth ministry volunteers when they graduate. Some ministries will use older high school students from this group to minister to junior high students or be camp counselors. As you meet students in your community and church, you'll probably find they fit into one of these 6 categories. You might have already been mentally placing names of students into these categories. Let's see, where would Michael and Taylor be? And what about Tim, Chris, Natalie? How about Ashley? Maybe you even want to take out a blank piece of paper, write out these 6 students at the top, and start filling in names of your students. But I warn you, if you do this, it's going to reveal a little bit about your ministry. Have you met all 6 types of students? Does your ministry reach and disciple all 6 types of students? Or are most of your students in just a few of these columns? Some of us might not know students from each one of these categories. If you honestly can't name a single No Way kid, then you might want to ask yourself why. Do you visit your local campus? Do you ever attend community sports events? Do you coach or tutor? Do you have any outreach events or activities that draw any of the 3 types of outreach students? Are some of these types of students forced to go to your church by their parents? Where could you go to encounter more outreach students? Similarly, if you can only think of 1 or 2 Looking for Ministry kids, ask yourself why. Why aren't your students developing into leaders? Do you have a student leadership program? Do you provide opportunities to serve? Do you train students how to reach out to their friends? If we find our ministries are missing some of these students, we might need to reevaluate the reach of our ministries. All right, less than 8 minutes. If you make one-on-one time a priority with all 6 types of these students, you'll start to see incredible fruit. Want to know more? Check out Connect for an intense view on each of these kids and discover tons of ways to reach them where they're at. You'll also learn how to train your adult workers to reach out and minister to these kids. Just another ministry tool brought to you by the Source for Youth Ministry. I'm Kristen. Thanks for watching.